Namaste. Welcome to our July Satsang. As usual, at the beginning, it will be commercial time. First, you have to forgive me in this, the way it works, when I think I'm moving this way, I'm going that way. So, here we are. All right. Christian Non-Dualism, which is a commentary on Theologia Germanica, a very remarkable book written by a priest who was a member of a military order, which was not uncommon at that time. For example, you maybe heard of the Knights Templar. They were a religious order of soldiers, and they went on a lot of crusades. So, the Teutonic Knights were such an order, and this priest belonged to it. You won't get this stripe. That's for a sample copy. But it's good to see, because reality is non-dual. But God is not just what we used to call a Johnny one note when I was a kid. God is one, God is two, God is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. God is infinite. So God is many, and God is one, and God is no thing, not nothing, but no thing at any time. We just have to understand that and know that when we get the real experience of divinity and of our own self, it is non-dual. A lot of people have visions. Oh, my Lord Jesus talks to them all the time. The Space Brothers talk to them all the time. Well, crazy is one thing, and wisdom is another. And one way you know is how it affects them. There have been many people who've claimed that God came to them, God spoke to them, or an avatar did, and so on. And then they end up committing suicide. Yes, what a terrible thing, but it happens. And I know people that did such a thing. They thought they'd attained to the highest. Some people think, well, I've attained the highest, there's nothing left for me. And I might as well just go drown myself, and they do. So it's a terrible and horrible thing. Always be objective about your own self, not just about everything else. All right, fine. That's a gloomy way to introduce. All right, here's a web address, gitatalksocoy.org, where there you will find both transcriptions of my talks on the whole Bhagavad Gita, and also audio of the talks I've given on the Gita. So there we are. That is end of commercial time, and now we'll get to you time. That's a good idea. A lot of people talk about me time. And the true me time of meditation is very important, but it's good to let there be other people in our lives. Not everybody does. All right, are we ready? Are you aware of any hierarchy of souls, such as that our individual soul is itself a subgroup of an oversoul, which is itself a subgroup of yet another oversoul, and so on, etc., etc.? Yes, there is such a thing as group soul, but this takes place in lower evolution. For example, an insect lays eggs, and maybe 500 little bugs hatch out. And then as the evolutionary level of the form grows higher and higher, less and less are born. And then there are animals that they have a litter. They have 10, 12 dogs, cats, and so on. But when we get to the really higher evolution, there's only one child, as a rule. Twins do occur, quintuplets occur, but this is because of some very special karma between those people and one another. So, when we're really evolving, we're away from that. Yet, because we're in the universe and everything's made of energy, which is actually consciousness, we're all interrelated to everything. So the yogi does have a sense of kinship with everything. Even those trees I'm looking outside the window, they are alive, and they're alive with the same life that is in me. But in them, that life is asleep. And in me, hopefully, it's awake. So one thing is important. The higher evolved we are, the more individual we become. Until you have people like Swami Sivananda that are absolutely unique. It's interesting, there have been great self-realized masters for how many millennia? And no two were ever alike. Not even similar, though fakes often observe these great beings and then they pretend like they are that. I remember there was a very well-known one back in what I call the 10-year yoga boom in America, who had read about Anandamayi Ma and decided she was going to, she called herself Mata Atmanandaji. But when she told her groupies, it really means stoned out mama. So you can get the quality of this woman's consciousness. All right. So anyway, such it is. And one sense, so we're all part of humanity, and everyone is related to us. And actually, we're related to every sentient being. And that means something. That's one of the reasons that we feed the birds, we give them water. We've had quite an influx of squirrels because the squirrels like the bird seed too. And so we see them. And they are also part of the family of evolution. And we should see them as, say, child brothers and sisters, but they really are. You and I are surrounded by life. That great field of life is God, and we're all existing in this life. And it's a very good thing to experience, not to just consider, but experience. All right. Can you speak about biomagnetic therapy? Just a little bit. The yogi, as he practices, changes his entire vibration. And that includes the vibration of the physical body. You see, people could touch not even just Jesus' body, but the very material of his clothes, and be cured of an incredible amount of very serious diseases. Because his consciousness pervaded everything. And you and I, we all have an aura. It extends out some feet. Especially the etheric body is about, say, 1.5 inches or 2 around our whole body. So even our clothing takes on our vibration. And since Jesus was perfect, his consciousness is perfect, anything in his near vicinity, and especially what touched him, would imbibe that perfection. And illness is imperfection, and so they would be cured by the divine light. So we're all biomagnetic beings, ultimately. And there are certain therapies that are more appropriate and more effective for the yogi than others. Now, I'm not saying a yogi shouldn't take this or that, because we all have different karmas and our bodies are not exactly all alike. So we should realize whatever's to hand, what we intuitively feel is good for us, that's what's to go for. But vibrational medicine, I have a whole posting on our ocoy.org webpage about vibrational medicine, because we're dealing in sadhana with vibration, and everything is vibration. Vibrational therapy is the most effective. That doesn't mean we should confine ourselves to that, but we should be very aware of it, and aware of its value. Homeopathy is vibrational medicine. In the pill, let's see, do I have anything here? No. We use it. You'll read a listing. Ah, yes. I have something here. And it says it's homeopathic. Now it has a list of ingredients. There must be 30 ingredients, all right? But what is really in it is the vibrational patterns of those elements. So the vibration is in there, and so when it's put on the body, it immediately goes into the body and into the aura of the person and works for their betterment. Homeopathy is the most popular and most widely used form of therapy in India, logically, because it fits in most with Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism. It was started by a physician who went to live in India and studied and learned the Hindu ideas of energy as the basis of all things, and from that he conceived the whole concept of homeopathy. And it works the best for a yogi, because as soon as you take your homeopathic remedy, it's absorbed right immediately into your energy system and works. So as I say, there are many forms. Light therapy, color therapy, these things also work. I don't mean we should avoid, the more pill and sometimes knife versions, but be aware of these things. So biomagnetic therapy, and I've written a book on the subject, is how just with the use of the hands, we can affect our own biomagnetism and the biomagnetism of others for the correction and the cleansing of our whole biomagnetic field. And it's very, very important, and it works for us very well, because again, we're attuning ourselves more and more to those subtle levels. And I do recommend the book and its application. If you can find someone that will do it with you, that is really good. If not, well, as you can even work on yourself. Literally so. All right. Along with the Bhagavad Gita, I am also slowly working my way through your book on the poetry of Lalla Yogeshwari. Yes, incredible person. Can you explain where she fits into Soham yoga and just why her words make so much sense? Because she was sensible. And she was sensible because she was a yogi, and she was a yogini, and she was an adept yogini, and she learned by living and experiencing. Sadhana teaches you everything. It is said, for example, about mantra, sit and repeat it And this mantra will teach you everything. Now, we should be very careful about the way we want to employ all that, but it is possible. However, it's not good to use sacred things as gimmicks, but it can be done. So, the yogi is not stupid. The yogi's intelligence advances. Now, don't expect to take after a few months to take an IQ course, IQ test, and see if it's up or not, because those things can't be, the real intelligence can't be measured by a test. But it is really, really so. The yogi is always sensible, although to people that are not yogis, he may seem to be making nonsense. But Lalla is right straight on and knows what she is talking about because she's a Soham yogi. Soham is the essence of everything. That means it's the essence of all wisdom. And therefore we can access it. However, let's not think, okay, I want to be 10 points higher, so let me meditate. What you need is what you'll get in meditation. So just be with Soham and let it be. Of course, the people around you may think you're going crazy. That's always a lot of fun, too. I think I've told you when I was 9 years old, I figured I was crazy. And I sat in the 4th grade and I looked at the people and I thought, and I liked them, you understand? I thought, they're sane. But I'm not sane. I knew I wasn't like them. I didn't think I was better or smarter, but I knew I wasn't like them. And I thought, should I do something about it? Should I start working consciously to be more like them? And then I thought, I'm having more fun than anybody in this room, so I'm staying nuts. And that was the end of it, and I have never, since then, bothered to think about the question. Because my father loved crazy people, and I inherited this thing. So to me, I've had my first friend I had in this incarnation when I was only about 2 or 3 years old was absolutely out of her mind. And because she was crazy people have an interesting aspect to them. They don't differentiate between people the way others do. And therefore, when I was only 2 or 3 and she'd been over to visiting my grandmother, who was across the street from her, when she got up to go, she turned to me, just like I'm sitting in a little teeny baby child, little rocking chair that my mother had had before me. And she said, I live just across the street. Why don't you come see me sometime? Well, it was amazing because it was horrible to have intelligence and being treated like a dumb kid all the time. So you know it. And so I would go over and ring the doorbell and she would come out. She had a glassed-in porch and she had a glider, not a front porch swing moving on chains like other people did in our little town, but a glider. That was high class. That's quality folks. Slider version of a swing. So I'd come in, she'd say, well, let me get ready. And she'd come back and she'd be all dressed up as if she was going out somewhere. As I say, she's crazy. And she'd have on she would have changed all her clothing to what she'd do if she was going shopping or somewhere important. And she had this thick wool coat with this gigantic fur collar, and she, of course, had a hat on her head and everything. And she would sit, and we would move back and forth on the glider, and we would talk. Now, I don't know what we talked about, and I don't know what you talk to a 2 or 3-year-old child about. But we were both crazy. So we were perfectly satisfied with each other's company, and somehow we were completely entertained with each other. And so what happened? So, you see, a lot of people we think are crazy are seeing reality differently than us. it's not a bad idea to get paying attention and see. And sometimes they see very wise things, very, very wise things. For example, I heard of Carl Jung talks about this, that he was in a mental institution and a man was standing looking out the window like this, but up in the sky. Okay? And so he saw Jung and said, come over here. And he said, did you see that? And it was the sun. It was at a time of day where the sun could be looked at without hurting your eyes. And he said, if you will put your hands like this and then move back and forth very slowly, you will see that there is what's like a shadow. There's like a tube that extends down from the sun, and that causes the movement of wind on the earth. Well, Jung, being secure in his own sanity, did not mind talking about crazy. And so he explains, he said, I thought, well, this man's crazy. But then, years later in his researches, he read an esoteric book. Forgive me, I forget. It was from a tradition that was in like the ancient Roman Empire. And it said, if you look at the sun with your hands on either side of your head and you move, you will see that there is a tube that comes down, and this causes the winds on the earth. And so this man must have been an initiate in that mystery school at some time. So it's all quite amazing. But it's good to keep a lot to ourselves so they don't guess. All right. Okay. I was wondering if it's all right to pronounce Soham with a longer sound than the sound, such as Soham. The reason for this is because the sound in my head gets clouded or faint when I try to intone it longer. Any advice for a clearer tone? Yes, do completely as is natural for you. Let it be spontaneous. Don't think, oh, it should be shorter, it should be longer. No. Don't think it should be sharper, it should be fuzzier. No. As you go deeper into Soham, it permutates itself. And what after a while starts out with Soham, becomes just Soham. And then it's just ideational almost. It doesn't have to do that. So don't think, oh, that's not happening to me. If it doesn't happen to you, you don't need that. In Soham Sadhana, it's not one, it's a single practice that works for everyone, but it doesn't fit all. But it fits every person individually to them. Therefore, whatever is spontaneous, whatever is natural, do it. And of course, observe if it really is benefiting. Sometimes we do things we figure will be all right and they just don't work. See, you are now in the laboratory of your own consciousness. You're the only authority there. You're the only boss. You have to be clear-sighted, make your decisions, and go accordingly. You understand, a real yogi is more and more individual and more independent. Now, you may hide from people that fact so that they'll be comfortable thinking, oh, you depend on them and oh, you're part of the group, etc. But as Sri Ramakrishna said, yet know in your heart you belong to God alone. It's a nice knowledge. Okay. What is a typical day at the Atma Jyoti Ashram? What time do you wake up, take your meals, meditate, read, and discover new teachings? Oh my, you credit us with an awful lot of activity. How do you observe Brahma Muhurta? How do you prepare for sleeping time? Do you organize extra activities outside the ashram? Okay. What's a typical day? That depends on when we went to sleep. I'm glad to tell you we are not hup 2, 3, 4 regimented. This is not a military encampment. So we go to sleep when we go to sleep. And we just set the alarm. And we usually 8 hours. And when the alarm goes off, well, then we get up. See, I know it's time to say, oh, we get up at 3 in the morning and we get up in the pre-dawn. And oh, it sounds so romantic. There's nothing romantic about sadhana. It's plain, solid practicality. So we get up. And then what do? Well, of course, we meditate. We meditate twice a day. We meditate. Then after meditate, if somebody wants breakfast, etc., then we eat, and then we go to do our work. And we quit that at 3 o'clock, and at 3 o'clock we eat our one actual meal of the day. Though in the morning we can drink some kind of protein drink or this or that or something. It's not in stone. We have our meal of the day. Then we digest, we read, and so on. Then we meditate again. And then after that, often we read. We read a lot. What do we read? Anything we like that comes to mind. Right now, I'm just coming to the end of reading all the Robert von Gulick novels about Judge Dee. If you haven't read them, I recommend them. Judge Dee his name was D. Genji. I'm sorry, I don't love numbers, so I forget how long he lived, but he lived many, many centuries ago in China, and he's very, very famous. I think it was about the year 700. He's very famous because they really believe that he saved China, the Chinese civilization, from total destruction. That's a whole story to itself. So there are lots of stories about him, lots of folk dramas about him. And Robert von Gulick, who was ambassador, the Dutch ambassador to Japan, got interested in von Gulick, of course, from Japan, and he was interested in China. And so he wrote these books. They're very, very entertaining. They don't have any great moral value at all, or any great esoteric value, but they're incredibly enjoyable. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. Others read other things as they like. We are very individual. We are a group of individuals, and the individual is what prevails. So we're not clockwork figures. So our schedule could shift 3 to 4 or 5 hours. And what difference does it make? Because nobody's watching us living through a closed circuit camera. And we're not public property. So we just live as we live. In a sense, remember in La Boheme, when the tenor is singing about himself and says, how do I live? I live. So there we are, very irresponsible for an adult. But that's a lot of fun too, is not being responsible. So that's how it goes. Yes. So at Brahma Muhurta, well, if it comes and we're sleeping, we're asleep. If it comes when we're awake, we meditate. You see, superstition about anything should be really held at bay. And pseudo yogis have a lot of have a lot of genuine superstitions, such as Brahma Muhurta, oh, the Brahma Muhurta at this time, blah blah blah, and your mind gets calmer. Does it? Is that your real experience, or did you just read it in some book? No, you read it in just some book. The truth is, if you're a real yogi, when you meditate, it doesn't matter what time of day. And if you're a real yogi, it doesn't matter if it's in a train station or on the top of a mountain. And if that isn't in your experience, then you're not a real yogi. Nah, that's the real facts. So all this kind of obsession with things, and schedule can be things, does not work for the yogis. As I say, we're not clockwork figures. So as it happens, it happens. The thing is the japa going on all the time? And is the meditation focused during the meditation time? And that's the only thing that matters. So you see, we're not much interested in how we would be viewed by a person who was observing us. Do you organize extra activities outside the ashram? Thank God, no. We're living at the top of a mountain on the edge of a national forest that's tens of thousands of acres. And actually, I can see a highway if I move enough and look out, and I see a couple of roofs, and especially across from us, there's scattered houses because it's a forested area. And but we cannot feel them at all. It is just like we're 300 miles from anything. It's very, very wonderful. So there's no feeling of vibration. There's no feeling of agitation. There's just the tranquility of this. This is the value of a forest. You see, trees are very important, and their magnetism is very important. And yes, people have gone out and lived in the desert, but they didn't have anywhere else to go because they were unfortunate enough to be living in a blasted desert like Egypt and so on. But the real value, in fact, there are scriptures called Aranyakas in India that mean forest books, because the first great yogis and great sages were forest dwellers. You see, the trees have spirits. Every living plant has a spirit inside us that is evolving. And the trees, there are tree spirits. They're rather humanoid looking, and they can't go more than maybe 10, 12 feet beyond the tree. Yes, I've seen them. That's why I'm telling you. And they have an intelligence of their own. It's very dim. It's kind of like an asleep intelligence. But there's great, great peace when you don't cut them down. One time we were in California, actually going to the Ananda Cooperative Village to meet with Swami Kriyananda. And we were driving along this heavy forest. It was beautiful. And suddenly we came to an area, and it was horrible. There was a feeling of such hatred. I really mean hatred, like hatred and anger. And I said, look, the trees hate human beings. They hate us being here. I mean, I could feel it. I was shocked, but I could feel it. And then we came in sight, and the vista opened up, and it was a forest that was utterly devastated. That human beings had come in and, without sparing a single tree, had just knocked it all down. People get lost in the forest because the trees deliberately confuse them. Because they think they're an enemy. They'll kill me if they're in the mood. They want a house. Okay, they kill me to get the house. Now they can't think that exactly. But they're there. They're real people. So we're surrounded. Now I'm looking at a multitude of semi-sentient beings, but they are evolving beings. And these are their bodies. But since they're asleep, it's like walking into a place. If you had 1,000 people and they were all asleep, everything's tranquil. Everything's fine. I've myself been places in India where there must have been 200 people all asleep on the floor. And it was just as nice and quiet as could be. So we live at peace. It's a wonderful thing. So why should we go out and pester people who want noise and confusion in their lives and pretend we can teach them how to get it? Oh yes, we're the sages from the hills. Yes, down here in the life you realize you're in the busy life, and yet you must learn you are tranquil here. All of yeah. Please go somewhere else. I'm not going to tell you this crap. So, we live at peace. Do many people come around? No. Can many people come around? No. There are people that cannot walk on this property because of the vibrations. I'm very serious. There are people in the town, like we go, say we go to a doctor, and so on. People we become acquainted with there. And they're really friendly to us, and we really like them. But we'll invite them to come and visit us. And somehow they just don't ever manage. And I understand why. Because believe me, when you come in through our gates, there's like a whole aura that to us is wonderful. But higher vibration dislodges negative entities from the aura. Don't think of negative entities just as evil spirits. People have all kinds of even nature spirits, and they're vampiristic, and they come into the aura and they live off of their subtle energies. I had an esotericist who had very clear clairvoyance talking about this. And he said, just like, say, a worm sometimes kicks or something, he said, when these people have all, he called them barnacles in their aura, when they come into the aura, these barnacles start kicking and they feel unsettled. Or, oh, I don't feel very at peace here. I don't feel something's wrong. These are the people who say, I went there, but something didn't feel right. They were what wasn't right. Anyway, so they're insectile, thought form entities started kicking, and so they had to go. And so it's seriously so. We have had people that are supposed to make deliveries to our door, and instead they put them down outside our gate, not even inside the gate. They put them outside the gate. They cannot walk in. There is a kind of a pillar we made, stuccoed it, and there is a very marvelous statue of the Virgin Mary, Our Lady of Grace, truly beautiful. But you see, the mother form of God is power, is Shakti. And for example, in the context of Christianity, the thing that demons hate the most is the Virgin Mary. And the thing which drives them away are images or prayers to invocations of the Virgin Mary. In Hinduism, you see, you have Durga, Kali. Mother is a power figure there. She's not just like tranquil mommy that tells you bedtime stories. And the demons fear her because Durga has 10 arms, and in every arm, in every hand, there's a weapon, and the weapons are for cutting off the heads or driving back demons. And therefore, They can't stand it. There was a disciple of Sivananda that had become a soldier somehow in Europe. I don't quite know how it works. But he said at one time they were taken to a very famous monastery that was renowned for exorcism of evil spirits. And what it was, a gigantic, nearly 20-foot tall image of the Virgin Mary. And then there were literally chains with manacles in the whole huge room. And they brought in possessed people, or sometimes supposedly just crazy people, and they shackled their hands and their feet, and they anchored their heads, so they had to keep looking at the Virgin Mary's image, and the evil spirits would leave. Now, maybe it'd take a day or 2 or 3, but always the evil spirits left, because you see, everything we see is a thought form and has a vibration. And she frees us. The mother is very interesting. She is Mahatmyam. She both puts us to sleep and ties us up, and then in time, she takes off the ties and she wakes us up. We were born of her womb. We are her children. First, she incubates us, and then she brings it out. And she too does smack us on the rear, and we go, wah, and here we are. And we've got to learn the lessons of how to run the maze of life in this world. But the people who are not for that, they cannot stand it. We live here to get out of this world, to go beyond rebirth, to go beyond the need for evolution in all these various, not just lower worlds, but higher and higher worlds until we transcend them. So we are for freedom, but this is the jail, the prison house. Neem Karoli Baba used to call this world central jail, because in a county, that's the worst spot to go to. You go to the county jail, you go to central jail, you're a serious criminal and you're going to get serious incarceration. And that's what he called it. And when he was ready to leave this world, he said, now I'm getting out of central jail. But there are people who love central jail and they don't want to get out. So those people think of a reason not. Often they'll come into a place and say, I feel kind of sick. I must have eaten something wrong today. Sorry, I think I better go back home. And the truth is, what makes them sick is the healing power. The healing power that corrects ignorance. But they love their ignorance, and that's their excuse for their way of life. Oh, I'm just ignorant, and I know I don't have a real good background in spiritual things. Yeah. They run. They pretend like, oh, I just wish I could. Oh, no, they don't. They wish they couldn't. Therefore, if they manage to come, they come. If they don't manage, they don't come. And we rarely have visitors. A lot of people say, I'd like to come. Say yes. This happens continually. Even people locally, we get an email. I would like to visit sometime. I get the emails. I always say, we prefer Saturdays and in the morning on Saturdays, but tell us which is best for you. We never hear from them again. Never. I've had people write from Texas. I've had people write from Hawaii. I'd like to come for a visit. Write and say, yes. Just let us know when you come. We never hear from them again. There you are. So, yes. So you see, there was, they tell of a yogi that lived far away from any place much, And he lived in a place that was hard to get to. I'm sorry, Buddha. I'm really talking about Buddha, who was a master yogi. And so people came and whined to him. See, people in ignorance, other people in ignorance are their brothers and sisters. So they feel comfortable with them, and they like them, and they want to be around them, and they want them to be around them. So they came to Buddha and said, why don't you ever go into this city, and there's all these people, and they need your wisdom, and yeah. What are you doing, hiding yourself away on that mountain? That's it. We are hiding away on this mountain. Suits us. So, anyway, they whined to Buddha. After all, you have this wisdom, you're not sharing it. So Buddha said to these people, go into the town and ask every single person, if you could have anything you wish for, what would it be? And you remember what they write. If you need, write it down. So, and don't come back to you, said this to everybody. Well, there was maybe 20,000, 30,000 people in the town. So it was a long time, and they came back. And they came back kind of tired out and is in old hip parlance, bummed out. And Buddha said, well, who wanted enlightenment? They said, nobody did. And Buddha said, then why do you want to have me try to force on them what they do not want? Perfect logic. Listen, you see, it says in the Bible, a friend is joined to his idols. Leave him alone. This is a real principle of higher spiritual life. Leave the sleeper alone. Don't wake them. Leave the old growling bear, the old sword-tailed bear, in his pen, wandering around and around. Don't take him out for a walk. Leave them to themselves. And unlike Bo Peep sheep, they'll never come home. Because their consciousness is behind them, away from them. Okay, fine. Sorry. I have read that Anandamayi Ma would say, Joho Jaye, whichever. I mean, I can't read it. It's not in Bengali character, so I may not have it right. Which translates to whatever happens, let it be. Well, it's just sort of, what happens is fine. Kind of, it's maybe a little better. Did you happen to hear her discuss this? No. What's her discuss about it? That's the way it is. That's an outlook. That's a perspective. What's to be expounded about it? To me, it relates to surrender and acceptance, which you talked your toss on the Gita. Well, I never said about surrender or acceptance of anything. You don't surrender. You take in charge, and you learn that you, of course, go to the rules. If you want to walk across a body of water, you're going to sink and drown, so you better take a boat. Worry about people who talk to you about the need of surrender. You don't need surrender. You need to take these two hands and take right a hold of moksha itself and bring it in and become it. That's the real fact. So any fool could say, oh, whatever happens. Oh, yeah, man. That's what they were all right. Smoke the marijuana and say, oh, yeah, man. Like, you need to mellow out. Well, as Jesus said, verily they have the reward, their own ignorant, addicted self. But those looking for a higher life have got to be, like the old song said, I suppose there's someone who woke up spiritually, and it says, so I buckled up my shoes. They didn't have laces in those old days, and I started down the road. That's who it is. You see, we're seeming to sit here on this mountain, but the truth is we're going down the road. And if nobody wants to take that journey, well, why should they bother to come? Okay. I seem to recall SRF brother Anandamayi on one of his tapes many years ago, stating that once you're initiated by the Guru takes on 25% of the disciple's karma. He added that God takes on 50% of your karma, and the remaining 25% you have to work out for yourself. What is your response to that statement? My stepmother used to say, everybody that believes that, stand on your head. It's foolishness. It's nonsense. We're not machines. Therefore, you can't say this percentage, that percentage. Oh, there's a field out there. A quarter percentage is planted and so on this. Is that the way life really is? Of course not. You think God's got a karma scope somewhere? Or karma thermometer? Or else, all right, no, I'll take a quarter of this away. Why doesn't God take all of it away if he loves you? Because you're hanging on to it and you won't let him take it. That's the real truth. Don't kid yourself. Nobody can take your karma. But you can dissolve your karma through jnana, Atma Jyoti, knowledge of the self. Guru has nothing to do with it. Guru doesn't, oh yes, the Guru speeds up your karma. Nonsense. That is lies and superstition of fakes and phonies and people that were deluded by their own phony Guru. Oh, without Guruji, I could do nothing. Well, I used to manage it well, but once I got Diksha, then it all changed. Diksha came from outside you. You've got to get rid of everything except what's inside you. Puke it up. That's the real truth. But you see, it's all just what comes out of a horse's rear end. You see, sometimes people call someone a horse's ass. Well, teachers like Anandamayi, whom I knew personally, they're just horses' asses. And it's only horse crap that they have to dispense. I know, and I say I knew him. I knew the whole gang that ran, it was a gang that ran the organization. And let me tell you, although it was silly and foolish as could be, it was equally poisonous. So my advice to you is run. Because every one of them, I quit, thank God. Every one of my yogi friends that stayed in self-realization fellowship fell to pieces and became destroyed, and they remained faithful members. Two of my friends became the creators and leaders of the Sunday school program, and they both were drug addicts. They were drug addicts who literally sat at home and breathed their marijuana smoke into their children's faces to get them to breathe the marijuana smoke. One of them, one of the big ones, he had his name in at Mount Washington. When the right time came, he'd go off to be a monk. He was married to a wonderful woman with 4 of the most wonderful children I've ever known. So he himself bought a Porsche, started dressing snappy, went around picking up women all over Hollywood as much as he could, divorced his wife, abandoned his children. That's how he ended it. I could tell you story after story. Believe me, friend, it is the road to self-destruction, which makes them all the more guilty. They can't say they did it to me. So God, you're not a trained animal, and God is not messing with your head or your karma. It's all up to you. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. It's okay with me. I don't get paid a commission. All right. Is the shifting war of the demonic asuras and the gods a permanent future of this planet? Well, you see, nothing can exist without being dual. Once duality exists, it dissolves. So light and darkness, yes, what we call good and evil, positive, negative, it will continue. Absolutely. I can assure you that this will go on. Now, it's very romantic to be more like, say, the Christians and even the Muslims and so on. Excuse me, I need to shift a bit. So, that there's the war between the good and the bad, the angels and the demons, and you're in the midst, and which one will you choose, and so on. Inside you are the only asuras you need to worry about. Your own principles of ignorance, your own negative actions, your own negative addictions to negative actions. They and in you also, though often tied up and gagged or sleeping, there are the higher parts of you that lead you to the knowledge of the self. That's the war that matters. That's a Mahabharata war that really matters. The inner war. But the truth is, since it's your nature to be victorious, you already are victorious. But if you don't know real yoga and you don't practice real yoga, well then you don't have much of a hope. But I tell you that if you practice real yoga and real sadhana, all this kind of stuff just begins melting away because it's just part. See, there is a talk about Yogananda called Awaken the Cosmic Dream. And that's how it is. Awake. It's a dream, but you can be awake in a dream. One of the signs of developing consciousness is being aware you are dreaming and knowing you are dreaming. Because usually we don't. We take the dream seriously and we're terrified and so on. That's one of the first signs that the yogi has, is he realizes, oh, I'm dreaming. I remember a very vivid dream. I was walking down like a rural type road, and there were these beautiful poplar trees all on one side. And it was beautiful. And there were several people with me. I was walking down and looking at this, and I turned to them and I said, think, all this is just in my mind. It isn't even real. But my subconscious mind has actually created all this. It's amazing, isn't it? That was one of my first significant yogic experiences, not seeing light, not seeing a vision, not going momentarily into samadhi, but to start seeing through the trick that has been played on you by Maya. So then, your nature is divine. Practice Soham sadhana and discover and manifest your own divinity. It's as easy as it can be. That's why I like this nonsense Anandamayi is talking. These people have all these complex things. Oh, they have gimmicks. If you're really a faithful member, they'll tell you, well, there's this practice that they tell people up at the Mount Washington headquarters that they don't usually tell people, but you do this and that. You want to know the Lahiri Mahashai practice for maintaining brahmacharya, and if people tell you I'm lying, don't tell me I'm lying. I happen to know it's true. Okay, once in great confidence, there was one of these members, the one that ended up blowing smoke, dope smoke into his children's faces. He told me how two great things. One is, Yogananda said the most accurate depiction of Jesus was Hoffman's head of Christ. So they sold 8 by 10 and even small wallet-sized pictures in sepia tone. But he told me in secret, the renunciates at Mount Washington, they have pictures in full color. Now, if having a picture in full color is the only thing that marks out your superiority to somebody else, you're pathetic. You're pathetic. So anyway, also, they would tell secret things. Or they say, oh, here's a picture Yogananda always. Don't tell where it came from. So you'd walk in, see a picture, and say, oh, that's beautiful. Where'd it come from? I'm not allowed to tell. Little Missy Prissy, I'm not allowed to tell. So anyway, he told me that the Lahiri Mahashaya method for brahmacharya is you wrap, I'm not lying, you're free to think I'm lying and making it up because it's so idiotic. You wrap ice cubes in aluminum foil. Now this is for men. And then you put the aluminum foil with the ice inside on your testicles. And you concentrate at the third eye and say, Om Lahiri Mahashaya, Om Lahiri Mahashaya, Om Lahiri Mahashaya, Om Lahiri Mahashaya. You know, if you could fall for that, you really ought to be maybe put away. So it is. So this is this kind of nonsense you have. There'll never be an end to it, friend. There will never be an end to it. Okay, fine. Someone says, no questions. I want to thank you for your remarkable output. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that much. It's all the wisdom of Sanatana Dharma. And yes, the mercy and grace of people such as Anandamayi Ma and Swami Muktananda, Swami Sivananda, that I knew. So I got it and I'm just handing it on. Okay, but with a lot of words added in, as you can see. All right. Please discuss Jesus saying all these things I can do. He doesn't say that. He says, all these things I do, you can do and more. Did he mean that literally? And is this what we should aspire to? No, you should aspire to be a Christ. He was not the Christ. He was a Christ. And every one of us has a Christ nature, and we should aspire to manifest that. And therefore, what did he do when he was 12 years old in the temple? He proved that the religion of Israel had nothing to teach him. He went there, he sat with the elders, he asked them questions. They could not answer the questions. They did not know it. And his parents came and found him there, and he said, don't you know I need to be about my Father's business? What is our Father's business? Our enlightenment, our liberation. So after that, he went home and he joined himself to a trade caravan going to India. He reached India when he was 14 years old. He became a disciple of Sri Chaitanya, an illumined master of the Nat Yogi tradition, which is the Soham yoga tradition, by the way. And he lived there, and he attained this great status. And he returned to Israel to teach. Well, you can guess how welcome he was. And so they crucified him, and Chaitanya was sitting in meditation, and he saw this. And so, by his yoga powers, he went there, projected there, whatever way you want to call it. And he took Jesus out of his body. You see? When Jesus said, into the hands I commit my spirit, he was talking to Chaitanya. It's okay if you don't believe that, but I do. And then, when the time had passed, when many things, you see, Jesus went higher and higher in those days, and finally went absolutely to the absolute, and then he came back down. And Chaitanya entered the tomb, brought his body down, it went into the tomb, got his himself, reincarnated in that body, and brought it to life. And then for 40 days, Jesus was with his disciples, and then in their sight, he rose into the air, and there was like a great cloud of light. And when he went, he didn't go way up to heaven. He went back to India. He lived in India for quite a long while. There is a book that has been recommended publicly and endorsed publicly by the present Shankaracharya of Puri, called The Christ of India, written by somebody with a name like mine, with somebody with the same name as mine. But he recommended it in public talks because Christians are whining, oh, they say Jesus was in India and so on. And he said, that's right. And you read that book by Swami Nirmalananda. It'll tell you the truth. Right? Rather nice. So we must become exactly what Jesus was. Other Christ. Christian means little Christ because originally they taught that everybody could become a Christ, so they made fun of the followers of Jesus. But that's what a Christian is. Another Christ. Absolutely. What he is, he said, because I live, you shall live. Meaning, Jesus was just ahead of us on the evolutionary journey. He entered into that boundless life of freedom, and so will we, like him. In a sense, we're following him, but in following him, we become like him. Become exactly what he is, not just was. Okay. Will you speak about Sanatana Dharma in the USA, the evolution or destiny of spirituality in the USA? I know it's an enormous topic. You're right. Okay, and it says, thank you, I value your work talks and so on. Well, thank you for saying so. Thank you for being able to read them and hear them and know from within it's your truth as well as mine. Yes. So, you understand the world is old. This continent is old. Yogis used to live here and wander through here. There was a time when India ruled the world, and yogis of India roamed everywhere. And in every genuine civilization, you will find elements that show the yoga tradition. For example, in South America, you will find buildings that will have the body of a snake that goes all around the whole four walls. And on the snake, there will be circles and different designs in the circles. That is the Kundalini Shakti and the chakras. Everywhere we find this tradition. In our own Native American tradition, we find amazing things about the third eye. All these things we think are yogic, but they come from the original tradition, which was worldwide at one time. And fortunately, at least bits of it are found preserved in different cultures. I was fortunate enough to hear a lecture by a Buddhist monk. You have to forgive me. Another friend's name was in. Sorry, it's completely gone. He wrote a book called Hindu America. And it's sad. He came, he showed slides. He had 400 slides of artifacts from outside India that show Hindu religion, that they're symbols of Hindu religion. And he showed about 60 or 70 of them. But he wrote the book Hindu America. See if you can find it. Bhikkhu Shaman Lal. That was the Buddhist monk. Showing, in fact, he even showed a statue of a jaguar that was found in a well in an underground cave, like a labyrinthine underground cave in one of the countries of South America. And tests showed that the image was made out of Chinese jade. It had come from China. There are, always they're calling things ceremonial objects, the anthropologists, because they don't know what they are. For example, a man with some knowledge of real science was in one of the museums in Mexico, and it said ceremonial objects and had these old metal things and stuff. And this man said, those aren't ceremonial objects. That's the elements of a wet cell battery. Well, of course, the scientists who know didn't believe him. And he said, let me duplicate it and I'll show you. And he duplicated it all in modern things, put it together, and it functioned and put out a mild electric current. So people don't even know their own real heritage. So this great wisdom was everywhere. So there are things where they can't understand what they are. And one person who knew aviation, American, came and said, well, those are jet landing strips. Obviously, they had jet craft. And this is for landing. And they say so. And they say they used to fly through the air. They will show you a photo of what they call a pushpaka. In India, it looks like a 3 or 4 story house that's flying through the air. Well, we know where there's so-called laws of aerodynamics. Beware of Westerners with laws in their head. And so it couldn't fly. But I asked a real scientist. He said, yes, if you could throw the right kind of magnetic field around even a house, you could go through the air. The air there'd be no resistance in the air as it moved. It can be done, but people don't know how to do it now. So you see, there was one world, and there was one religion. And so it's a religion that belongs to everybody. There's no one anywhere in the world. I don't care if they're on an island, a tropical island somewhere, eating grub worms and worshiping a coconut. Sanatana Dharma is their ancestral Dharma. Because the human race began in India. The first humans were Manu and Satarupa, the progenitors of the human race. I have visited their samadhis, their tombs, in the sacred forest of Naimisharanya. And believe me, unless you're really a clod, you go there, you'll be surprised at what you feel when you walk up to those samadhis. And even more, go on a little further to your right when you're facing them, and go to the banyan tree where Vyasa dictated the Mahabharata to Ganesha, and Ganesha wrote it down. That is really a place to be. Incredible. So you see, everything comes from Bharat. Everything goes back there. And when you're ready to trace your evolutionary journey back to God, it will lead you to Bharat. I tell you, it will lead you there. You don't have to go there, but it's really great. All right, indeed. So then, Sanatana Dharma is everyone's birthright. and there's no country where Sanatana Dharma did not at one time prevail as the only religion. Okay. Swami Sivananda's version of the Gita contains the Gita Mahatmyam, that means the glorification or the glory of the Gita, and expresses its importance. Please explain. Well, it's useful to people who know Sanskrit. To you and I, if we're not really conversant with it, doesn't mean anything. The English translation tells all the glories and the values and the benefits of the Gita. We read it, take it seriously, but then study the Gita for ourselves and see whether what it says is real or not. It's just as simple as that. It's just a piece of promotion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you see, it's what do you know? What do you know? What do you know? A man came to Sri Ramakrishna one time and said, I believe Jesus Christ is my Savior. Sri Ramakrishna said, so what? What do you know about Jesus? He said, I saw him. Sri Ramakrishna said, then good, that's right, and you keep on believing. That's the way it works. But this was an Indian Christian, do you see, whose ancestry goes back to the Vedas and beyond. Okay, final one. What does Sanatana Dharma say about blood and organ donations from the perspective of the donor and the recipient? Nothing that I know of, but there are principles. And there's not unanimity on this. For example, you and I don't eat animal flesh. Well, even more of the being is the blood. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses will not treat blood transfusions. They say the Bible says to not eat blood, and to have a blood transfusion is an infusion of blood. One thing for sure, as eating meat affects your mind, so will a blood transfusion, and so will the placing of an organ in our body. It's us to decide whether we'll accept that, whether we'll like it or not. For example, there was an experience of someone, I think it was a young man, and he was sort of a motorcycle fiend, and when the man got the transplant, I forget what kind of organ, he started wanting to ride a motorcycle. Literally, you see, because your body and your mind are interrelated. Your body is an extension of your mind. So it's true, someone who gets a transfusion of your blood gets his mind, your mind infused in his. And a bit of your body also. Now, you see, a yogi who's doing sadhana won't have to worry so much, because the fact that daily, hopefully twice daily, he does his sadhana, then he elevates and transmutes the vibration of that blood or that organ, just as he is transmuting his own blood and his own vibration. Therefore, he won't have to worry. And such as it is. It is true that heart transplant involves the taking of the heart while the donor is still alive. That you'll have to. That's something only for the individual to ponder on, because in a sense the donor is killed by the taking of the heart. So is that or is it not? And don't try to blame your decision on a scripture or what anybody else has to say. Go inside. If you're not a yogi, well then I have no advice. Meditate. After meditation, then put that idea in front of your mind and see what your spontaneous response is. This is what is a good thing to do when you have any major decisions to make. Meditate, not thinking about it. Just go through the process of meditation. At the end of meditation, set the idea, the concept, the question toward your mind and see where it naturally moves. Though, to be honest, I would recommend divination. I'll tell you the real truth. Even something as important as that, I wouldn't leave it up to my tenuous grasp after meditation. It's good to have something objective that gives you the readout. And very definitely, for example, I do divination of some sort, and I feel the most reliable divination form is tarot. I've written a book on the subject, so called How to Read the Tarot. And geomancy works, but there's only one source I know that is reliable, and you'd have to get it, I think, through a secondhand book deal, and there it is. Oops. His real name was Stephen Gargilis, which means it was Greek. And this is geomancy. You have the question. It requires mathematics, but not supremely complicated math. And actually, see, geomancy was when people took like a stick, when they went, like we hear about the oracle, of Delphi, and we think the oracle sat there over the crack and the fumes came up and she went into a trance and told everybody the future. It only happened once and twice a year. Only on certain times, only rarely, as I say, just once or twice. Did the oracle speak. All the rest of the time, it was geomancy. They had a book, just like this book, and the individual put their question in mind, and they just took a stick, and there was the earth that could be marked in, and they would just make marks, a certain kind of marks and patterns. I don't know what one that was. And then they looked in the book and they read what it had said. And that seems very chancy, but I found it to be marvelously accurate, brilliantly accurate, actually. Sometimes even ask you to describe a person, and will describe you. It will give you the appearance of the person. So that too is very valuable. I definitely do recommend it. Now I think we've come to the end. My goal has always been 1 hour, but now we are 23 minutes more. I hope you don't mind. But your questions are important. Your questions are intelligent. Being an intellectual snob, that's important to me. And I appreciate them greatly because it means you think and your mind expands. So I can't see you, but I am so grateful you are there. And I'm so grateful for your questions and for your kind attention. And please always remember, I am not any particular authority, and therefore carefully consider what is said, and then you decide. Sri Ramakrishna, he was divine. He used to say this to people. He said, well, people eat fish, they chop off the head, they chop off the tail, and they slit it open, they take out the intestines, they cook and eat it. And so he said, take whatever I've said, you throw away the part that to you means nothing or you feel has no value, and just pay attention to what you feel does. So even such a great person told this. So what's a pipsqueak like me going to say to you? Therefore, thank you greatly. I am already looking forward to our next month's satsang. Om Tat Sat.